Welcome to the Ratbag Nomads. In this episode we return to the Amazon jungle where I meet my friend Wouter and we set off in an 8-meter canoe. Herodotus said day by day, what you choose, what you think, and what you do is what you become. So after cycling 10,000 kilometers through South America, absorbing culture and surviving the elements, so I've come to see a fellow cyclist who set out in a wooden canoe to explore the Amazon. I met my friend Wouter at an isolated village on the muddy banks of the Ucayali River after a 4-day journey by river barge from Pucallpa. Wouter started his journey 3 months earlier east of Cusco and the uppermost reaches of the Ucayali River. We traded stories of adventures on the road since we'd last seen each other a year ago in southern Argentina. Thumbs up. Say hola.
Hola. Hola. Hola.
Say high five, man. We stayed with a family that Wouter had met upstream. They rarely saw gringos here. As a measure of security and respect, I reported myself to the local police and village elders. We had letters of introduction from the Tribal Lands Council Home Office in Pucallpa, introducing ourselves as tourists. What's his name? ¿Tienes un nombre? ¿Tiene nombre? Wachituro. There are strong superstitions held in this area. People in the past had been murdered from misunderstandings ever so small, and just 3 months after filming this, less than 100 kilometers away, a tourist was killed after a local shaman had been shot by an unknown person. Wouter made the introductions with his crazy jungle Spanish. Like all of South America, the Spanish dialect changes with the terrain, and here it was an exotic, heavy accent that just made you want to smile. After a few days in the village of Victoria, Wouter had us off on our first jungle adventure. Today we're heading off into the national park. What's the name of the national park?
It's Pacaya-Samiria.
And as you can hear, Wouter's got a funny accent. He's from Belgium, and I suppose I've got a funny accent as well. It's pretty hot here in the jungle and wet all of the time. I would say there's a precipitation of about 99% with 100% sun and a mosquito factor of 10 out of 10. The Pacaya-Samiria National Park is a 21,000 kilometre parcel of land set up for the protection of the Amazon rainforest, and it's the size of Israel. The national park rarely sees tourists, and the last to enter from Victoria was over 4 years ago. We had a meeting with the local police chief, who wasn't happy or satisfied with our safety going alone into the park. He feared we may run into poachers hunting illegally, and explained a traditional ingrained fear of gringos in the area from the dark history of the rubber boom in the late 1800s, something that we would come to experience further in the coming months. He insisted that we take a guide. He also contacted the rangers protecting the area on our behalf and informed them that we were on our way. After buying a week's worth of supplies, we convinced one of our friends Alberto from the village to act as our guide, and we were on our way into the great unknown. First upstream 20 minutes, and then we turned off the Ucayali River and into a small flowing jungle stream. The temperature dropped almost immediately, and the sound of insects and other animals that inhabit the forest came into range. The creek was less than a metre wide, and we zigzagged, weaving our way through the undergrowth of vines and tree roots, all covered in their own civilization of ants, ever ready to bombard us with bites and stings if we dared brush against their self-proclaimed territory. After a few hours, the trees gave way to an open, flooded grassland. At this time of year, the water level is 5 metres higher than the drier months, and 90% of the land is covered by water, as the Pacaya Basin sits 20 metres below sea level. These streams connect a series of lakes that dense vegetation floats on top and moves with the wind. It makes it extremely difficult to navigate. The going was hard and slow. We lost our way in the reeds. Sunset was only a few hours away, and with the prospect of all three of us spending the night in the canoe, the rain arrived with even stronger gusts of wind.
Basically, it's been almost 2 hours. We're still stuck in the reeds, and our storm's coming.
It was a bleak start to our adventure. Luckily, after a time, we were met by some locals fishing. We followed them out of the reeds with motors screaming and wails of laughter in jungle Spanish. It took almost 2 hours to reach the lake, and as we did, the sun came out. We snaked our way through the black river water, with monkeys howling their mating calls. We arrived to the Santa Cruz Ranger Station to stay the night. It was an old-looking wooden house on stilts, with no power and a fire to cook on. We were warmly welcome guests, and questions went both ways as to why 2 gringos and a bicycle had come to visit. We feasted on shallow fried piranha that the rangers had caught that day. In total, there are 19 rangers covering the area. The men conduct patrols and inspections at night, protecting the national park. The sounds of the jungle was a mix of birds, insects and monkeys. A true soup of evolution, awash with calls in the night.
Our second day, and we're on the Pacaya River, making our way deeper into the national park. We've decided to stay the day at Santa Cruz, so tonight we'll be staying with the national park rangers again, and we're on our way to try and find some monkeys. In this area is the Pela Cara, which is a superstition by the locals that gringos come here to peel the skin off the locals and boil them up for their manadakia, the human butter. So let's try not to boil up anyone today. We've got Walter down there making lots of bloody noise with his crazy little engine. I don't think we're going to be able to get him away from Peru anytime soon. There's a guy at the ranger station that likes him. Thinks he's pretty. I can't hear a thing what you say, so I'm just going to nod.
One animal that's a plentiful and always close by is the magical pink dolphin. They are protected by tribal custom. With their human-like skin, they are mystic creatures. Seeing these ghostly animals, I felt was a representation of the absolute wonderness and enchanted location we were in. And now there's more behind me. But for some reason they don't like Walter's boat. Jimbir is the name of the fruit, and it looks like it's a green looking pod thing, and it tastes really sweet. These green balls.
Pretty tasty.
Tasty?
Uh-huh. Just don't swallow the pit.
It's pretty hot out there at the moment. You can hear monkeys going crazy. And this section of the jungle, it's all flooded from the wet season. So basically that bit of land behind us is some of the only land that we've seen for hours, because the water goes hundreds of meters in. What we got here is the water that we've been drinking for the last 4 days. It looks like juice, but it's just the river water, and it's the tannins in the river that are making it that colour. One night after dinner, randomly we went looking for alligators. They called into the jungle with throaty horn-like noises. The crocodiles would respond with similar noises. The deeper the returning sound, the larger the animal. There was one reply that we sped past.
More black
So
This is clear, no?
Cría,
here we are, and
Este tiene
we come out in the lagoon at night.
one move. One move?
One move.
Oh, yeah.
In one move, he managed to grab this baby crocodile, alligator, and now we're in our canoe with the National Park Rangers.
Pacaya-Samiria.
Having fun, Walter?
Oh man, this is so cool.
So talk to me.
Look at this van, how cool is this? Beautiful little creature. You're probably used to seeing crocodiles in your life. I've never held one. Never seen one so close. Let's go check out some bigger ones, eh?
Cool.
Cool. I throw it, lo suelto. Lo suelto.
Yes,
Así.
liberation. How do you say? Liberar?
Let him free.
Así.
Yes.
Wow.
The following day we headed off to the next ranger station. To get there we needed to cross a series of small lakes and rivers. We reached a lake that was completely covered in reeds. We fought against the overgrowth with no real idea in which direction we were going. Lost in a sea of green, we used our paddles to push from under and lever the reeds out from the boat. Alberto had the engine screaming and chopping its way. We tugged and pulled ourselves as long as best as we could. We could see trees on the other side, and we just worked our way towards them. It wasn't a real ideal situation, as these shallow lakes are home to anacondas, said to be 9 meters long and as thick as trees.
So we're stuck in the reeds again, trying to get back to the lake, but it seems like we've been stuck for a bit. Walter's just got a hook through his foot, and he's plugging away at the reeds as we go. I probably should be helping, but I feel like this is a moment that we'd probably want to remember.
It was only through teamwork and perseverance that we finally made it through. We arrived at the ranger station 10 hours later. As our time in the Pacaya-Samiria National Park was drawing near to an end, our next stage of the journey would be to return to the main river out of the national park. We expected to see a lot more people and outposts of civilization along the side of the river. The Amazon was living up to all expectations and reinforcing ideals. Walter and I were living out of our comfort zones. Every day was a new test of what was before us. Through the constant insects and humid temperatures, the language gaps, and the rising challenges of each day, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, as it's only through these experiences that you grow. And to finish off where we started with lessons from Helites, no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man. And stay tuned for our next episode of the Ratbag Nomads.